We will now be going to Ms. Jolibois, please, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chartier. Do you personally speak any languages
Yeah, I speak English.
besides English?
Well, I can speak Michif, I can speak Cree, not fluently, which is very unfortunate because I'm one of those victims of the residential school, which has not been recognized. I was in residential schools for, well, basically 11 and a half years of my 12 years in school, and then another 4 years getting my university at another boarding school type system until I was 21, and then basically, not proficient in the language.
So you mentioned the Saskatchewan and the Northwest Saskatchewan. There is the Michif. Isle Cross is a Cree community, and La Loche is the Dene community. And then when you go into
No, I would disagree with that.
no, let me finish before I ask you a question, because I'm thinking Batoche they have different linguistic groups who identify themselves as Métis. I want to know how you envision that if they were to apply for funding for specific for language retention, how do you foresee that?
Yes, thank you. Well, of course, Georgina, you know very well, La Loche is a Métis community, as is Île-à-la-Crosse. It's just that
Yes.
La Loche happens to be Dene speaking.
And that's why I say Dene community.
No, it's not a Dene community, it's a Dene speaking Métis community.
Yes.
Yeah, Dene speaking Métis community. And
no,
you were once one of us.
That's
And
right.
Île-à-la-Crosse,
It's a
if you go to
Dene
Île-à-la-Crosse and tell them you're a Cree community, they'll say, no, we're a Métis community, but we do speak Cree. And they used to speak Michif when I was younger. They spoke Michif in Île-à-la-Crosse, Buffalo North. Even in La Loche, they spoke Michif at that time, before your time. And so, yes, how I see it happening is there will be a Michif language fund, and Île-à-la-Crosse certainly will take advantage of that because they do teach Michif in the schools, but you call it Cree, that's fine. You can take it up with them, and they're your constituents. And for Cree and Dene speakers and Saulteaux speakers within the Métis Nation, I would see them applying to those funds as well. So basically, there is room for everyone. There's no point in denying, your Métis ancestry because you speak, a Cree language or, a Dene language.
It's really important because we have to clarify, because elders would say otherwise, and it's so important to validate the elders what they say, because I have heard people elders from Pine House to Île-à-la-Crosse who did say a Cree, and then they used the Michif. So how do you foresee educational institutions like Gabriel Dumont Technical Institute deliver or having access to funding to them?
Well, I would say that my preference would be that the federal government enters into dialogue with the government of the Métis Nation, and that we have an allocation for the Michif language or languages, and that we would ensure then that our governments, in the case of Saskatchewan, the Métis Nation Saskatchewan, have the monies to allocate to their institutions. So Gabriel Dumont Institute, which is the forefront of the language in our province, and you know GDI very well. Anyway, they would have, I think, the lead in this language initiative. But places like Île-à-la-Crosse, who are celebrating their 20th anniversary of Michif language, but you can go tell them, no, you're wrong. It's not 20 years of Michif. It's something else. That's up to you. But they're celebrating their 20th anniversary this year. And so, we see the mechanism being that those on the ground would be instrumental in moving forward. And in fact, it must be through primarily or initially through Métis governments. And we deal with our institutions in the same way that the federal government would deal with, their or your institutions.
So the Métis government being the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, the area directors and the local presidency office, and then the settlements. Is that when you say Métis government? Is that
Yes.
who you're thinking of?
Yes, primarily, yes.
2 minutes. Okay. I have seen some documentation where, when we were talking about the Métis population, anyone east of, is it Ontario, right? Anyone east of Ontario, the identity of a Métis is still an issue, or not identified within the Métis Nation, the Métis National Council, or nationally. How do we solve that issue, especially if they identify themselves as Métis and want to apply to teach a language?
Yes, well, no, all we say and all we can say is who we are, the historic Métis Nation of which you're a descendant, is based in Western Canada. We extend into northwestern Ontario, northeast BC, into the Northwest Territories, northern United States. That's our geographic homeland. We are a distinct people. We're not anything else. Now, there are people in other parts of Canada that are saying they're Métis using the dictionary definition of mixed ancestry. Now, what they would apply for, I don't know. Perhaps they want to learn Haudenosaunee or Mi'kmaq. I don't know what they'd want to learn, but they certainly would be applying there. They wouldn't be applying to a Michif fund because Michif is the language of the historic Métis Nation.
Just looking for clarification on that, because as my colleagues here would require some clarification on that, I would think, especially when we're talking to some of our colleagues, our MP friends from the out east, and they would require clarification. So we would look to you to provide that for us and with us. Yeah.
End of your time, but we'll be going to Mr. Hogue for 7 minutes.